the challenges become different challenges. When you're a startup, you're just trying to survive and you're scrappy and you're trying to do anything you can to get ahead. When you're maturing, you have to really build processes. You have to really think things through. You have to really hire the right people that want to solve those challenges and not startup challenges.
Welcome to the Brand Podcast, where you'll learn from successful omni-channel brands, which in turn will help your brand grow. Here's your host, Liron Hirschkorn. The Brand Podcast.
Liron Hirschkorn, your host of the Brand Podcast, and you're about to listen to a series of episodes we recorded at Shop Talk with some very special guests, all hosted by our VP of Marketing, Kate Bray. Enjoy the episodes.
Welcome to Chapter 5, our final chapter in the Retail Renaissance series. I am sitting here with Jennifer Peters, Senior Manager of E-commerce for Olly. And today we're going to dive into all things Shopify infrastructure. I might learn a little bit about coding. I don't know. But I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming, Jennifer.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's been a busy day for you.
It's been a busy day. This is a great show. There's so many people here, so many cool brands, so many great vendors.
Yeah.
It's been really fun. The expo is huge.
Yeah. Did you try the Starbucks line at any point?
No.
You just skip it?
I will just drink the sad hotel coffee. It doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, as long as it works and it has caffeine.
It's fine.
That's excellent. Well, can you start off by telling me and our listeners about yourself and your background in e-commerce?
Yeah. So I actually started in brick and mortar retail a long time ago at Barnes & Noble.
Really? Okay.
And then sort of made the transition into digital when I went to go work at a Christian publishing house / church supply business. And they were like a 200-year-old company, and they were doing only print. And it was really cool because I really had no background in digital anything either, but they kind of felt at the time like if you knew how to use Facebook, you were obviously a genius.
Yeah, you're a tech wizard.
Yeah. So, and they were like, well, you know how to run a bookstore. It's a bookstore.
Yeah.
This seems fine. And I was like, yeah, this seems fine.
Hilarious.
So that was kind of like my bridge, which was awesome. But I spent 8 years there and building up like a whole digital program from the ground up. Started very, very small and ended up being a huge, like being the main part of their business. So that was really cool. Came out to the Bay Area about 5 years ago. Went to work at a startup, which I feel like you kind of have to, just like a badge of honor, like you have to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't love it because we had transparent finances and I looked at them, and I was like, this doesn't seem good. But the great thing was it was hardware. So hardware engineers are an odd group. They're very unique. And I had kind of spent my whole career teaching or telling developers, like, this is what I want. These are the features I want. This is what we need to do. And getting the kind of feedback of like, well, we could do that, but it's going to take 6 months and, that sort of thing. But I think the really exciting thing is that when I landed at this startup, I asked one of the engineers one day if he would do something for me. And he was like, would you like me to teach you how to do it? Oh. And that was like a huge turning point for me. Like now suddenly, he taught me how to build sites, how to do all kinds of stuff. So it was, even though I didn't love working there, that was really critical. And my next role was at an agency where I just built stores for e-commerce brands. So we were an e-commerce agency, worked with Hershey and Slim Fast. It was like the saddest store I ever built. Just made me sad to think of how much money people spend on Slim Fast. But yeah, all kinds of brands. It was really great. And then I decided to go brand side and came to Olly and have been there for 3 years. And it's amazing. It's a great brand and it's a great kind of place in its business growth. And it's cool. It's awesome.
It seems like that transition from the translator, between the engineers and the product development to doing it yourself is even better than college in some ways.
It is.
There's so much more hands-on experience.
I think too, most front-end developers they don't have computer science degrees. Like I would say the majority of them are self-taught. I don't know what the statistics are on that, but I feel like the ones that I've kind of come across are self-taught. They're watching YouTube videos. They're like poring over GitHub. I mean, they really are kind of solving problems one at a time, and that's kind of how you learn. And they're the building blocks to being able to do it yourself.
Yeah, I would love to, but
It's
at this point,
I also know my limits.
yeah,
So-
yeah, and I think
So like you have to know your limits. You have to know, and like we were talking earlier about Photoshop.
yeah,
I just know that that's not a thing I can do. Like I just know I
There's
could
a
spend
line.
9 hours trying to make something look not terrible, or I could get someone who's a professional to do it in 10 minutes.
for sure. Yeah. So, one major reason why I was so excited to speak with you today is because I personally am launching a women's healthcare brand for the first
Awesome.
time. I've never launched a brand before, and I'm very excited about it. I have a background in marketing. I have a degree in marketing, but I have so many stupid questions for you.
Oh
So I will
There's no
probably
stupid questions. There are no
sprinkle
stupid
them
questions.
throughout this podcast. But well, let's start with this one and let me know what you think.
all right.
But I vaguely understand the meaning of front end and back end, but can you just define it for me?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a great question, and I've gotten that before on a podcast where
Yeah.
it's at the agency I worked at. We had a vice president who constantly was like, I don't know, let's just pull it out the back end. Let's just put it in the back end. And I was like,
Where is that?
let's not call it that, please. Let's not call it that. But I think the way most people think about it, it's like front end is the thing that the customers actually interface with.
Okay.
So the store that you see on www.olly.com, that is the front end. So a front end developer is the one who's really building out that customer experience, the customer journey,
Okay.
and all of the features and infrastructure that support that.
Okay.
Whereas like I think of as like a full stack engineer can do both front and back end.
Oh, cool.
But more on the back end is really like database stuff and reporting and analytics and things that customers never see. But as marketers and as business people, we need to function and make good decisions about what we're doing.
Sure.
So I think that's the easiest way to separate those. And then a full stack can do both.
Okay. So as I'm thinking about the brand launch and what channels I'm going to start with and where I'm going to go, Shopify is definitely one that I've launched a couple of drop shipping
Cool.
brands just to practice and see how hard it is to design a store. And one thing I want to ask you about is for founders running a team of less than 30 people, what should they know about their Shopify tech stack? Is there a way to set that up incorrectly? And are there advantages to hiring someone professional to do that for you right from the start? And what would that look like?
That's a really good question. I can kind of frame this up for the history of Olly as well, because we were a startup. We were founded in 2015. We were acquired by Unilever in 2019. That's not a lot of time.
That's
So we still have a lot of like startup-y things that we do that are like I always describe it as like we're in our awkward teenage years. Like we're not quite an adult yet, but we're not a kid, and we're still figuring some things out and ironing out what that looks like for us as we mature. But I think a big piece of that, and you can kind of trace this back as a founder, as a small brand, or like you're just starting your first store, the most important thing you can do is plan. And that really is just like, what do I think this year is going to look like? What do you think you need? Is there a revenue or a traffic or tiers that you would say like, once we hit this, let's add subscriptions, like we don't need to launch with subscriptions, but that's something you can add on. So I think the planning and road mapping piece is really important. And I think anybody can do it. I don't know that you need a professional. It probably would make it easier. But I think when you come to events like Shop Talk, these are all the people that do this. So there's so many resources out there and people you could talk to and meet that would give you their opinions for free.
Yeah.
I don't know that you really need to hire somebody for that, but
Okay.
I think it's, there's lots of ways to run a really inexpensive website that is really low cost and has a very low cost of ownership. And that's where you start, and then you grow from there.
Okay.
The thing I would warn against is making decisions that have a long-lasting impact that are going to make it hard for you to scale.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I think can happen is that subscriptions is a great example. So let's say you launch with subscriptions and suddenly you realize this provider can no longer accommodate our volume, or it's getting really expensive because their pricing is like a profit share kind of thing. Moving subscriptions from one platform to another is like a total nightmare. Like it's the worst.
Like
It's all customer PII. It's all encoded credit cards.
PII.
Customers like personally identifiable information.
Oh, okay.
So which you have to protect with your life.
Yeah.
And then there's tokenized credit card numbers that you have to move to. It's really hard. So I think that's a great example of just, when you're going to add subscriptions, make sure you're using a provider that's going to stick with you and grow with you over the next 5 years.
Okay.
Don't just look 6 months down the road. Like, you really have to look at like the long game.
Okay.
Because you might make decisions that later on are going to be really hard to reverse when you're at a volume and you're growing quickly, and you have to kind of like stop the plane in order to fix it, while it's in flight or whatever, however that goes.
Are there any fatal mistakes that you could make while you're setting that up that would take the plane out of the sky?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like we're building stores, it's not, there's nothing, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's great. People make mistakes all the time. I think the one thing, as long as you learn from it, you haven't lost anything. You now know, I'm going to do that again.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Olly's in its teenage phase.
Yeah.
I think you should write a book about that, because that's a great analogy.
It is.
Startup evolution. But I'd love to hear more about Olly's journey, the brand story, and where you joined the team within that journey.
Olly is an amazing company. We were founded by Eric Ryan in 2015. He's also the founder of Method.
I love Method.
I know.
I only use Method.
Method has the best smells of anything. I mean, I don't know who their smell scientist is. I don't know how that works.
Salt and eucalyptus.
The almond oil one for me is like,
Yep.
how can I get everything in this scent?
Yes.
But he is a genius, and he's really kind of like this serial entrepreneur that's always looking for markets that are ripe for disruption. So like the cleaning supply market was one of them.
Yeah.
And then, the vitamin aisle, like, standing in a vitamin aisle 10 years ago was kind of like everything sort of looked the same.
Yep.
Everything's like a big chunky capsule or a big chunky, chalky, gross thing.
Yeah.
And, I think the idea was just like, what if we could make this awesome? Like, what if we could make this delightful and make taking vitamins a great experience, a tasty and fun experience? And also the packaging. I feel like with Method as well, like that super disruptive packaging is really exciting because it didn't look like anything else that was on the shelf at the time. So that I think was great. The flavors were great. I mean, the flavors are amazing. And then, we scaled really fast, and we got acquired by Unilever in 2019, which is really fast. And there are a lot of upsides to Unilever, to being owned by Unilever. We're in a division with other acquired brands, so we all are kind of in the same situation. But there's a lot of great infrastructure and other things that kind of come along with that, and supply chain, and a lot of places where obviously Unilever is super mature and really able to kind of support us. Cybersecurity, all of those things that as a startup are not like at the front of your mind. So it's been a really good match. I came in, I've been there for 3 years. I was not there during the acquisition, so it was after. So I think it is hard too. I think there's a lot of cultural things where, if you ever have worked at a startup, there's always people that are like, I was employee number 4, and you're just like, oh, cool. Okay.
Good.
Yeah. So I think like we have a little bit of that still, where you're kind of like, this is different than the company I thought it was going to be when we started this company. But at the same time, like the challenges become different challenges. Like when you're a startup, you're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And you're scrappy and you're trying to do anything you can to get ahead. When you're maturing, you have to really build processes. You have to really think things through. You have to really hire the right people that want to solve those challenges and not startup challenges. So, because they are different, and not everyone loves maturing business challenges. They're not for people that love startups.
Yeah,
so it's a different kind of person.
You described it so well too earlier. The transition from the infancy stage to the teenage stage as an employee can be so jarring.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was.
And so, and you described it as going from the challenger brand to the brand to challenge.
Yes.
Which is awesome. That's what the book, I think, maybe could be potentially called.
That's a tough one for some of the people that I think have been around a long time, because they still see us as the disruptor. And now we're the established brand. We're Unilever,
So how does that translate as an employee to your execution day to day when you view the company that you're working for as the disruptor, when the company is in fact the brand to challenge?
I think it varies by department. I would say our marketing department, e-commerce, or our e-commerce teams, like we get it, because we're constantly doing competitive analysis, understanding who's emerging on the market. Of course, the Kardashians have a vitamin, and like everybody kind of wants to play in the space now. I think it probably is a slower develop on the other side of the business, like more on the operations or supply chain, where they're kind of like, wow, we used to only have to ship to Target. Now we have to ship to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, like this Amazon shipping, it's so much. It's so much work. And it's just like a different, I don't know. You don't want to long for the days that you only were shipping like the small amount of product. It's great to be shipping to everyone.
Yeah.
But it's definitely different.
Yeah. And what do you attribute the company's success to in successfully navigating that transition?
I think at the end of the day, it's an amazing product. I mean, I'll come back to the fact that it's a great product. It works. It tastes good. But at the same time, all of us love it. Like, we all love to be there. It's a great place to work.
Good culture.
Yeah, it definitely is. And yeah, our market's millennial women. So I think we're very good at speaking to that audience and tailoring our communications and our marketing and even our color palettes to kind of that demographic. And it's been really successful for us. And we even branched out last year and made a men's libido supplement. It was like our first real men's product besides Men's Multi.
Yeah.
And boy, was that interesting.
Yeah. Why?
It was like we went from selling to millennial women to like an older demographic.
Yeah.
And I think it's like the libido market is tough too, because there's a lot of regulations on how you can advertise, and like Google doesn't want anything to do with it. Amazon doesn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But it's selling so well.
Really?
And it's really apparently works great. So it is called Mighty Mojo.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah, that's the name of the product, which
I think when brands are able to come out with charming names for their products like that, that speaks so much to the culture and how open and fun the culture must be in order to get something like that approved. That's amazing.
I would agree with that. I don't know that a 55-year-old man wants to be buying Mighty Mojo, but, you know, they do. So
it's subtle enough. I love it. Okay, so going back to Shopify and the tech stack, I'd love to understand what one tipping point that founders need to be aware of when it comes to their technology.
The most important thing I can think of, and maybe we'll put this in this fatal mistake category, integrations are key to the business. So you want all your pieces to fit together. There is a way of thinking that I can have my whole tech stack be this one company because they offer loyalty, they offer email and SMS, and I can just have it all in one place. And I think that'll make it easier. But the reality is you can't get best in class products. Like, no one company has every single product that is the best out there. It's just not a thing. So understanding integrations, I think, is really key. And knowing that you can put pieces together and build an amazing tech stack. You don't have to go out and try to shop around for one that has all the things you want. Like, that's not going to be a good answer. So the integrations, understanding how the Shopify universe works, because there's like a loosely defined Shopify universe. There's apps that everyone uses in their Shopify store. A lot of Shopify brands use Klaviyo for email because the integration is so slick and easy. We use Attentive. We love Attentive.
You saw them, their booth.
Their booth is really nice.
Yeah.
They're doing temporary tattoos, but they last like 2 or 3 years.
At the booth? Or just
at
like,
the booth.
Are they doing it at the booth?
Literally at the booth.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting a tattoo. Okay, that's amazing. I was joking about doing it, but I really
It lasts for like 2 years.
That's so cool. Okay, that's amazing.
I don't know what their design options are. I was like, I don't really want one that says like Attentive rules.
Shop Talk
But I do really like Attentive, but I don't need the tattoo. I'm good without that.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Swag is getting so creative.
Swag is getting really wild. It definitely is.
Amazing. Okay, so tech stack. We keep saying tech stack, and I vaguely understand what might be included in a tech stack, but could you maybe explain to me as a beginner what would be included and maybe what YouTube videos I should brush up on when it comes to understanding my own tech stack?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're running a direct-to-consumer business, like you start with your e-commerce platform. So
Okay.
you've got your platform. Let's say you're using Shopify.
Okay.
So you need to have email to talk to your customers. So you need to plug in email.
Okay. MailChimp or...
It depends. I mean, there's a lot there. Klaviyo is an easy one to use with Shopify.
Okay.
Attentive's a great email partner. There are tons about MailChimp, HubSpot. There's tons of them out there. They all integrate directly with Shopify.
Okay. Yeah.
So you need email. I mean, because you need to have your store. You need to have a way to kind of talk to your customers directly. Anything that you're really like plugging in to do something feature-wise on the site, I would put in that category too. So like if you were going to add subscriptions, if you wanted to add a loyalty program, if you wanted to add some kind of like customer behavior analysis tool, like we use Content Square, and that would be something you'd do. Like you would not do that as a brand new startup. That would be much further down the road because it's very expensive. But
it's worth it.
It's really great. It's a great tool.
Okay.
But it helps you understand how customers are interacting with your site, what they like, what they don't like, if your creative is working, if people are trying to click on something that isn't clickable.
Yeah. It seems like you also, when you're integrating something like that, you need to have someone who owns that, because
you do.
Just having the data is one thing. Someone that knows when to say, hey, this is a concerning PPI or
That's so true. I mean, I think that there are a lot of brands who are like, we want to have data. But unless you analyze it and do something with it, it's pretty useless. And you can spend a lot of money capturing data that you never use. And that's not great. That's a waste. It's a waste of resources. We're lucky enough to have an insights team, so that's really helpful. But there's a lot of great capturers out there of data and analysis tools and different things that can be really helpful. But that kind of goes in your tech stack too, like your analytics, your Google Analytics, your sort of anything you're using to measure success or conversions. There are a lot of heat mapping tools that can kind of show you like where customers interact on the page.
It's really valuable.
It's great. There are products out there that do session replay. So if you have if you have an issue that comes up, like you can see what the customers actually did. I mean, it's all anonymized. It's not like you can see who did it, but I think there's you can have like the bare bones tech stack and just have your platform and email and some basics. And then as you grow, you kind of add on to that and you do that over time.
The acronym that I learned early was PPI, right?
PII, yes. Yes.
Cool. Okay. I left my pen across.
No, that's great.
PII. So data privacy, is something that everybody seems to be talking about.
Yes.
Another thing.
Like, we're not talking about Gen AI at conferences. We're talking about data privacy.
Man, I should have one of those temporary tattoos for every time I've heard Gen AI today. So you are very familiar with data privacy laws.
Yes.
Can you help me understand why this is such a big topic lately, and also how you expect that AI will affect the conversation going forward, or maybe how the conversation will evolve with that considered, I guess?
I think it will. Customer data is kind of the holy grail that you must protect as an e-commerce professional. And you have to limit the access to it. Like, not everybody on your team needs to have access to customers. The more limits you put around it, the safer you are. I mean, even if you get your laptop stolen, now you've got a data breach. Like when you're a little startup, you don't really think of it that way, but you think about like some of these big, huge companies that have data breaches and how devastating it is to like the trust and the, it's just, I don't ever want to be that person. The states are really interesting because like really California was the first state to go all in on data privacy and consumer protection. And it's great. And basically what it says is like, you as a customer always have the right to understand what data we have on you. You always have the right to say, I want you to delete that, or I just want to see it, or it's wrong, I want you to correct it. And then, there's some other elements to it, but that overall, that's what it is. And it makes it really easy, like couple clicks to opt out of advertising. And also, there's like remarketing that happens with people, and you're just basically taking them out of the stream, and I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I think people should not be served ads that they don't want to see.
Oh man, I agree with that.
And there's a fine line too, because it's like customers really want personalization, but they also don't want to feel like they're giving up all this personal data. So it's really hard to do full personalization unless you have information to work with. But so I think it's a really fine line. But we're seeing all these other states take similar actions. Okay. And so it's nice because when CCPA, the California legislation passed, it was like, whoa. I mean, it kind of like blew everybody's mind. And so we spent a lot of time in the business like building out these infrastructures for how does that work? Like, how does a customer opt out? How do they do this? How do they do that? And then most of the states that have come along after that are really kind of doing almost the same thing. So it's the infrastructure's already there, which makes it a lot easier. I really hope that someday soon there will be a federal privacy policy that there's, can kind of apply across the board, because if I have to put one more state in my footer, I'm going to lose my mind. But yeah, I mean, I think CCPA was the model for probably all of the states as they built out their own legislation. But it really is to protect consumers. Yeah. And it's a good thing. I think it's harder when you're training people internally that maybe don't have a lot of experience or they don't know a lot about it. Like, you never ever email a customer's name and address to another person in your office. Like, that would be, you wouldn't want to do that. Like, it's not a secure transfer of PII. There's tools you can use to do that, but you would never want to send, like, one of the things that's really common in marketing is to run some sort of sweepstakes to get people to sign up for email. Okay. So let's say you're running something like that on Meta, and then now you have this spreadsheet in your hand of all these customers that signed up. If you send that as an attachment to somebody else in your office, that's really bad. You shouldn't do that. Yeah. So that is the kind of thing I think that, you don't think about it as being harmful, but if you lost your laptop and that is right on the desktop, like, that's terrible. And, we're doing our customers a disservice when we're handling their data in a sloppy, lazy way. So there's a lot of education there. Also, it's constantly changing. So it's just the kind of thing you have to keep your eye on all the time. This is definitely a benefit of working as a Unilever acquired brand, because their legal department is second to none, as you would imagine. Oh, they're very, very good. Yeah. They're very good at this. They have a lot of brands to protect. They've been doing it a long time.
Not a lot slips through the cracks.
Yeah, they're very good at managing this, much better than, like our 4-year-old startup. So it's a big advantage to have that kind of legal power behind you.
How are you thinking about data privacy in the next 10 years? And maybe what should founders be considering when it comes to data privacy?
I would love to just cross my fingers and hope there's some kind of federal law, a law that applies to all states. I don't know what's going to happen. I do think, there's definitely some interesting stuff happening in Washington State around their consumer privacy protections, especially as it relates to health and wellness. So, like, diagnosing conditions and like, that can be interpreted as a lot of things. So a lot of the laws, they don't really have any legal precedents other than, like, it's new and this is what it says. But until their cases start going to court, there's no precedent for, like, what does that mean? For a while, there were all these, like, you would see them on Instagram and these little posts that were like, hey, have you been on this such and such site? Your privacy might have been violated. Like, contact this law firm to be part of this class action suit. And really what they were saying is they were calling session replay illegal wiretapping. There's no legal precedent for that. But at the same time, like, you don't want to ever be one of those brands that are on one of those ads either way.
Oh, yeah.
But, I think there's no law or precedent that says session replay equals illegal wiretapping. But there's just so much to develop still. I think with AI, it's just going to be a whole new thing. Like, we've barely scratched the surface. The intellectual property, the proprietary information that people are putting in there. We had a policy at Unilever that was like, absolutely do not use this, period, at all for work. Don't put anything in there. And I think the fear, for most brands is that people are going to be putting proprietary information in there. Then the machine's going to learn. Who knows what it's going to do with it? You don't know. There's just so much unknown. And I'm pretty risk averse when it comes to things like that. Like, I'm not an early adopter.
Do you use ChatGPT yourself?
Things. I do.
Okay.
I do use it, and I think there's lots of great use cases for it. The other day, I took this big long text document and converted it into FAQ format in like 2 seconds, and I was just like, "This is the best."
It is.
I ask CSS questions all the time. Awesome. I'll ask HTML questions. It's easier. In a way, it's easier than, like, trying to look it up and Google it and kind of go down this path of trying to figure it out. Like, when you can just ask, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so I, the other day, learned that you can take a picture of your skin tone, like take a picture of your face, find the hex code for it, and input it into ChatGPT and find out what your color season is, which I've been trying to figure mine out for so long.
I love that.
Yeah, and so that's my favorite prompt.
Oh, I love that.
I'm gonna
definitely doing that.
It's so fun. That's so cool. You can, like, put your lip color and all that stuff in. But do you have any learnings from your time with ChatGPT, or any favorite prompts?
I think it really is. And maybe as somebody who does code, it's like asking the way you ask the question is everything.
Yeah.
Like you want to make sure, and at least with ChatGPT too, you can like refine the question, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like trying to get all the parameters of what you want in there. Like you have to tell it everything you want. Like it's not going to make that leap for you. Like, I bet she'd like this in a spreadsheet. I would say I am like total novice. I mean, I'm really just using it for if somebody asks me for a LinkedIn recommendation.
Yeah.
I know, like that's my advice case.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, I'm definitely, I don't know. I mean, we've got a lot of younger people that work at Olly too, and I feel like they're way more comfortable with it than I am. I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot I could use that. Like I forget that it exists sometimes.
Yeah, me too. But then I have to make content, or
and you're like, I just need a place to start.
Yeah.
I can get the rest of the way in the LinkedIn recommendation, but I need to give me something.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to shift gears a little bit to omni-channel strategy, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just because something in the last few weeks that has become very clear to me is how unfamiliar so many sellers, I know you're representing a brand, but so many sellers are unfamiliar with Buy with Prime.
Yeah.
And its advantages, and just strategically what the benefits of Buy with Prime are. From my perspective, I've been working in the Amazon industry for a while, and I see it. I can see how that would obviously increase conversion rate. You would get access to data that you can then flow into AMC. There's so many benefits, and it just shocks me that people are not as familiar with it as I assumed they were. So I'd love to understand what your thoughts are about that feature. If there was for Olly, if there was a use case for it, or if that was something you guys were like, yes, we're excited that this is now available. And I have a follow-up question to that. I'd just first love to understand what your thoughts are on Buy with Prime.
I mean, when it first came out, it was so buggy, it was almost unusable.
Yes, totally.
So it was terrible. Like I used it on one of my freelance clients really wanted it. And it was so buggy, and it was just like, it was like hard code. Like you had to hard code it into the product page. Like I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And it was super buggy. This kind of goes back to the data privacy thing and being risk averse. I hesitate to share data with Amazon that is our customer data. That's not something that like they consented to. So I think part of that is that I just want to make sure that like we're really protecting our customers' interests and not doing anything outside of what we promised we would do.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's part of it. There's a lot of remarketing that can be done, if you kind of keep that in your own workspace. I guess workspace is probably not the right word, but if you keep that data in its one, in its one home. I'm not real bullish on Buy with Prime. I think it makes sense for some brands, like very small brands, especially brands that maybe were selling on Amazon and maybe have been doing a great job. And open up, I had a client who was doing a great business on Amazon and that wanted to have a D2C site for their credibility on Amazon, so that a customer could go and Google that name too and find their site and be like, oh, they're real. They're real.
Yeah,
that's kind of the Temu effect, I think, a little bit too. Where people are just kind of like, I don't know, is that real? Or that like that whole meme of like what I thought I ordered and what I got, So I think that there's like something there where there's some legitimacy about like having your own site. But they don't want to have multiple fulfillment options. They don't want to have warehouses, like to be able to do it through Amazon, one and done, like is ideal for them. So I think it makes sense when you're kind of doing your own fulfillment. If you're a big brand, I feel like you've got to protect your data. And Amazon doesn't give you anything back as a D2C site. So like you're giving up a lot and getting very little in return. So that's my feeling, is just like, let Amazon be Amazon.
Yeah.
And let your D2C site be D2C. But I think it just really depends on what your specific goals are and what your challenges are.
Okay. And a lot of brands are so hesitant like that with Amazon, rightfully so.
Yes.
Just considering all of the challenges that come with selling on Amazon in general. And so I'd love to just understand what your philosophy is or when it comes to omni-channel strategy, and maybe just how Olly thinks about that, because it's obviously going to be so different from someone like Nike, who it's
totally.
like, no, like I'm not going to do that. But
Yeah.
what is Olly's approach to that? And then maybe what is your philosophy on omni-channel strategy and how it might evolve in the next 10 years?
The first thing I think is really important is that you have top-down leadership that does not create channel conflict and does not create channel competition and builds the culture of when we win, we all win. We're really lucky to have that. Our CEO is amazing. But there are brands where channels are kind of pitted against each other.
I've worked with brands
and
like
it's
that.
really hard. And then it becomes this very negative thing. When someone wins, you're mad.
Yeah.
Like, you took my customer. Like, it just gets really petty. Your sales team hates you because you're stealing their customers. And
you don't get budget for necessary
Exactly.
activations.
it's just, it can be really ugly. So I think that leadership and the cultural leadership piece is so important. And it really can only come from top down. It has to be that way. We're really lucky at Olly to have different customers in each channel. We have a lot of product lines. They do different things. Sleep is our biggest. And
I sleep stuff.
I don't sell much sleep on Olly.com because you can literally buy it anywhere.
Right.
So, like, why would you buy it on Olly.com when you could get it at Target or Walmart or at the airport or, all these places? So it's really nice because we can kind of all optimize around the product lines and segments that we do well with. And our customers are not all the same. So, like, the Amazon customer is different than the Olly.com customer. And it's really created this very cooperative feeling on our team. So I'm on the e-commerce team where we have an Amazon manager, we have an Omni-channel manager, we have a shopper manager. So we all work together to deliver our numbers. And it isn't one thing or another. It's kind of like, when e-commerce wins, e-commerce wins.
Right.
There are a lot of great tools out there too, like Micmac, where you can kind of let the customer choose the channel they want to shop in. So, like, if you're running paid ads and, customer clicks on it, it'll pop up and it'll say, like, do you want to buy this at Olly.com, at Target.com, at Walmart.com, at Amazon? And it lets them choose because customers have preferences too.
For sure.
And the most important thing is that they convert. It doesn't really matter where. I mean, it's great if they come to Olly.com. That's my favorite thing. You get the benefit of the revenue, also the first-party data. That
probably a more personalized packaging or unboxing experience.
Great unboxing experience. I mean, very different than Amazon's, obviously. So it's not the same experience as like Target or Walmart. It's definitely an Olly experience. We call it Ollified.
Ollified.
Yes.
I love that. Okay.
So it's really different. But we've been really lucky too to have that kind of split amongst the channels of like, these are our strong suits. This is where we're going to play. This is where you play, and everybody's happy. With a smaller catalog, it can get a lot dicier. I think with us, we do have these like clear product segments, but other brands, I think it can be a little more challenging, especially if the customers are kind of the same. So I think you just really have to figure out what distinguishes this group of customers from another, what motivates them. And then you also have to be a good partner to your retail partners. So, you want everybody to feel good about everything. We do emails that support like Walmart's Mental Health Month, like there's a lot of ways to support your retailers that also doesn't feel like, oh, I can't believe I have to send this, or you feel like you're being put upon. But I mean, who doesn't like good mental health? Why would I want to support that? It's great. So I think it's different for different brands, but for us, it's been a little bit easier just because we do have different channels with different customers around, in product segments that are different. And even they're in brick and mortar distributed differently around the country. So like some areas of the country have a bigger selection, some don't. It depends on what Walmart buys or what Target buys. So understanding that the geographics of that too are really important because it can help us dig in areas where we know that these products are not in as wide a distribution in this part of the country or whatever it is.
Okay, that's awesome. And I've come up against that exact issue so many times where I'm trying to pitch Amazon as a channel to an executive at Columbia Sportswear when it's like, how do you not how do you not see this, like that this ad budget is necessary? You've got your competitors are targeting your branded terms, and people are thinking they're buying your product, but they're actually entering someone else's funnel. And I know you understand this, but why is this? Why are we here?
You have to think about everything's a trade-off, and Amazon, you got to pay to play, but at the same time, you can't walk away from that. That's not an option.
Well, it's this weird crossover between merchandising, because you're literally building the shelf with ads.
Yes,
literally,
totally.
Instead of a buyer being, coming into your headquarters and saying, this is how I think that we'll put this and display this on an end cap or whatever. You're saying, I think that we need to be visible on the top of search of Amazon, where when people are in this aisle or on this search term. And so it's just crazy that how culture in a company can disrupt that so easily.
Definitely can.
I love that. That's such a good answer. I was going to say louder for the people in the back for sure. Okay, so I have one final question for you. What is one thing that founders, brands, brand operators can implement in the next 24 hours that will have a major impact on any of the things we discussed today? Multiple, tips would even be great, but tech, UX, or, their omni-channel strategy in the next 24 hours, what's something they can implement?
If you don't have a roadmap, make one.
Okay.
That would be the first thing I would say. Like, planning is everything. Even if it's incomplete, even if you have gaps, plan and build out your roadmap so that you know what your next 3 years look like.
Okay.
I think that is critical. I think a lot of startups skip that step and they're just like, I don't know, I'm just going to get this. I'm just going to do this, and then you end up having to spend time reversing those decisions. So I think the planning piece, I can't stress enough. It's so important. The other big piece, I think, is like, this isn't brain surgery. Like, our job is to put products in front of customers that they want to buy and that they're excited to buy. And it's really easy to get away from the concept of customer empathy when you're thinking like, well, this is our aesthetic and this is this and this is that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the customer wants to see the thing. They want to know if they want to buy it, and then they want to be able to buy it. And that's what we have to do. Like, we have to live into that. So I think there's so many times where we make it more complicated than it needs to be, where we've got, all these flashing things and spin to win and this and that and whatever, when really just customers, they're not motivated by a million things. They're usually motivated by like one or two things, and you need to figure out what those are. But all that to say, you have to look at your product, your business, your website through the customer's eyes. And that you have to understand that you are not the customer. No matter how much you think you are never the customer.
That's great.
That is so important. I feel like that's like one of the first things they teach in marketing. But I know many, many executives who it's gone.
No, they actually start with accounting, and it's horrible.
Accounting's worse. They're like, weed everybody out. They weed out the weed.
I had to try more than once.
I did as well. When I did my MBA, I did have to take accounting twice.
That's rough.
I hated it. My brain doesn't work that way. It was a real struggle, and I was real proud of my seat.
Yeah. Well, that's such good advice. And I definitely have, I need to get a plan together. I was going to say, I definitely have a plan, but
really basic. And honestly, I think there's like free templates out there, like you can find that you can use. And it's almost just like make a list of all the features you might think you might want someday, and then figure out what those thresholds are when you feel like it's time to add those.
For sure. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I feel so energized now. That's great.
It's good.
Well, thank you so much for rounding out our Retail Renaissance series, and this was such a great session. I can't believe you have so much energy at the end of a day of conferencing.
I don't know. It's hard to be in Vegas and be tired.
Yeah.
You have to keep pushing. I'll be tired tomorrow.
Yeah.
I got my flight home. I'll be like,
I've scheduled that for tomorrow.
This is, it is really energizing to be around all these amazing people, hear these speakers, get to talk to vendors, so many that you've never met in real life. Yeah. Like, I had several that I met last night in a bar. I was like, that looks like, oh, I don't know. Do I want to go over there? And then I was like, are you Ryan? Yeah. And he was like, oh my gosh, it's like those magic moments that we didn't have all during COVID. It's like, I feel like we're still kind of piecing those back together.
I totally agree. But it's a lot more of a profound energy that's just.
It is. Yeah. It matters more now. Like, I feel like, and it drives us. We feed on it.
Yeah.
And so being here is just, it helps you just remember like how special this business is and like how awesome it is that we get to work in it every day.
Yep. Yeah.
And all these other people love it too. And it just feels really good.
Yes, it's so inspiring. And I totally agree. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Having me.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
We'll do this again soon.
Sounds great. Okay.
Okay.